Welcome to the Running Channel. I'm Rick, and today Manni and I are going to be looking at the complex issue of overtraining, what to look out for and how you might be able to avoid it.
That's right, and in fact the complex nature of overtraining means that it can't be defined by one injury or symptom, and also often can't be pinned to one particular cause.
With Manni's expert help, we're going to be going through some of those common pitfalls runners face and the items that can actually add up to mean you might be overtraining. But before we do, we'd be really grateful if you tap on the subscribe button and also hit the bell icon so you get notified when we upload new videos all about running, which we do every single week.
We've already said overtraining is a complex issue, but it's worth saying that there's a distinction between pushing too hard on a particular day or during a short period and chronic overtraining syndrome.
There are two consistent symptoms of this: an increased state of fatigue, an increased perception of the effort required during training, but there are also a lot of other symptoms which someone may or may not experience. Things like changes in mood, decreased motivation, weight loss or reduced appetite, picking up more infections or illnesses, picking up injuries, and sleep disturbance.
So if you're regularly experiencing any of those things, aren't seeing improvements in your training, and you feel like you can't run at the level you had previously been able to in training or races, then it could be that this is what you're experiencing. If you're not, then these are the warning signs to look out for. And either way, we would always encourage you to go out and get expert medical advice if you have any concerns.
So what things should you try and take into account when trying to avoid overtraining, particularly when many of us don't have a coach or sports science team to tell us?
Let's run through the potential causes as well as some common injuries to give you a full idea of how big an impact different aspects of your life and training can have.
One of the advantages of having a coach or following a training plan is the idea of periodization, which means splitting training blocks into specific chunks where there are tougher training periods coupled with planned adaptation periods where intensity and volume might lower. So, for example, you might do 3 really tough weeks followed by an easier rest week where you still run, but not as hard or as far.
In fact, a lot of coaches will aim for a period of what's called functional overreaching, which is a kind of overload where you push your body very hard for a defined period and then back off to recover and adapt. This produces something called supercompensation, leading to improved performance.
But, and a big but, a danger here is that there's a very fine line between functional overreaching and just digging yourself into a hole from which you can't recover. For those of us without coaching input, it could be better to err on the side of caution.
This is where monitoring comes in, and I don't just mean logging your miles, but rather thinking about the combination of intensity, duration, and frequency of your runs. The way that you structure your running week to allow you to cope and recover is really important.
Using an app to track your training or even an old school pen and paper or a spreadsheet can help you see it all laid out and potentially spot any issues, like maybe doing a hard interval workout too soon after a long run. Don't be too rigid though, as when life gets in the way, it can be dangerous to feel like you still need to do exactly what you've planned.
Something that can potentially contribute to overtraining is your diet. Many people cite weight loss as a reason for running, but this can sometimes lead to an unhealthy relationship with food. And you still need to eat the right things to fuel both your training and your recovery.
In fact, not having enough energy availability over a long period of time impacts your hormones, your ability to recover, and the adaptation you get to exercise. There is something called relative energy deficiency in sport, which can have a wide-ranging impact on health for both men and women.
In particular, if you're targeting an intense training period, you need to prioritize the right nutritional support for your immune system and recovery. This means that you might need to periodize your diet in a similar way to periodizing your training.
Look at adjusting carbohydrates to meet your energy requirements alongside increasing protein intake, aiming for 3 grams per kilogram of body weight per day during any overload training, and include things like polyphenols, which you get from fruit and vegetables, which can improve sleep duration and muscle regeneration.
This one's a bit simpler. If you're training somewhere hot, somewhere humid, or at altitude, then these are all more demanding on your body.
Trying to run at the same pace as you would in cooler or lower climes will likely push your heart rate higher, so you'll be working harder and changing the emphasis of whatever run you're doing. Doing this for a long period is a recipe for trouble. Be smart and don't be afraid to hold back.
Not something you might think about when planning your training, but extra stress in your life, whether it's through work, studies, or home life, has a dramatic impact on your body's ability to handle training.
Remember that stress is a physiological as well as psychological thing. Not only does it make you mentally tired, but there's also a hormonal response impacting things like metabolism, immune function, and your sleep.
And sleep is the key to everything. Without enough good quality sleep, your body can't see the improvements you want through training, and also might not be able to cope with what you're asking it to do. We talked about monitoring your training, but you could also consider monitoring things like your sleep quality, mood, and even waking resting heart rate.
So don't underestimate stress in your life, and if you're struggling emotionally or psychologically, the smart decision is to adapt your running plans and not push yourself too hard.
We're all guilty of wanting to make up for lost time if we've been ill. Jumping back into training where we left off, trying to get straight back up to full speed, and maybe even cram in extra to compensate.
And it can be particularly hard to make smart, rational decisions. We feel guilty and worried about having missed training, but remember, you're likely to put yourself in all kinds of trouble by going too hard too soon. You won't have lost too much from a few weeks off, but you could lose months in the future if you're not careful. And it's not just illness you have to watch out for. As a physio, Manni, what are the other common injuries that people have come to you with when they might have been overtraining?
That's a really good question, Rick. Runners do pick up injuries for a lot of different reasons, but there are a few things that I see most often when someone has been pushing too hard for too long. Initially, pain starts on the inside of the shin. This is the medial compartment, and I see this most commonly with overtraining athletes and runners. This can lead to stress fractures. These are also one of the most consistent overtraining injuries I see. They're small cracks in bone caused by repeated stress and can occur due to some combinations of overuse, diet, or biomechanics. I see them most often in the lower third of the shin bone, but also in the thigh bone and bones of the feet. Impact and loading need to be avoided until they're healed. Chronic compartment syndrome can also be present in a person suffering from overtraining. This occurs in the calf muscles, sometimes both at the same time. It creates a stiffness and ache in both muscles. All of these conditions I have mentioned are termed as shin splints in the wider world, but they're all different in the way we assess and treat them. Shin splints or variances of shin pain are common for beginners because they are effectively overtraining at a low level because they build up too fast. Up to 24% of us will experience Achilles pain. We term this Achilles tendinopathy. This condition creates tightness and stiffness in the Achilles. Symptoms cause pain on the first few steps in the morning as well as during running. With this one, rest actually doesn't always help. A managed program of carefully chosen exercises along with running maintenance can load the tissues to recovery.
And that is exactly why, Manni, my friend, you are on board. We've been covering a lot of different areas in this video, all of which probably deserve more time and attention. If you've got any specific questions, please do get in touch in the comments below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Thanks for that, Rick. My passion and the passion here at the Running Channel is to help people get the most out of their running. Hopefully you found this useful. Please do hit that subscribe button to support us in what we're doing. And we'll see you next time on the Running Channel.